Let's talk about this story. You see this? You see the protests breaking out in Tennessee over the masks in schools? All these parents showed up.
Yeah, I saw a clip of it this morning.
They're screaming, there's a special place in hell for you. We know where we'll find you. We know where you live.
Wow.
You know what's really crazy about this stuff? First, I'll say a couple things. We have the story from CNN. School mask debate in Tennessee grows heated as local board requires masks in elementary schools. What's interesting is that Steve Bannon told us this. He said, come August 15th, when parents see what these schools are doing to their kids, the moms are going to come out and all hell will break loose. Something to that effect, paraphrasing. And it wasn't just critical race applied principles. It wasn't just the masses, all of these things. And now it's August 12th and we're seeing parents screaming at these people. So I think Steve was right about that. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks with schools coming back in full swing and parents being like, nah, none of this. But the crazy thing about it is these school boards that are voting to have mask mandates, while there are 100 or so parents outside screaming insults and we know where you live, veiled threats, why are they voting in favor of that?
Yeah, I don't know. These parents will have a long memory too. They are not going to let this go. If they do something to harm their kids' mental health, like we saw that last year with the mask mandates and just the policies that they put in place in these schools, depression went way up, anxiety went up, suicide hotline calls went way up, suicide rates have crept up. They are harming their kids in a lot of parents' opinions. Not all. Some people think that it's protecting their kids, which is why we cannot have a shared reality right now, apparently. So they're not going to let this go, Tim.
You know obviously. You know what these people don't understand, and so I'm 35, right? The time moves much more quickly as you get older, they say. And it's mostly because things become routine. At least this is my view of it. When I wake up and have breakfast and same breakfast over and over again, I don't have a strong memory of the breakfast I had because it's the same breakfast I had 100 times. I'm older. A lot of my experiences are routine and forgettable. But the first time you rode a train, I remember the first time I rode a train. I remember the first time I flew in a plane because those were like things in my life I'd never done before. When you're younger, you're 10 years old. A day is a lot longer percentage-wise of your life. So imagine a year of not being able to go outside, go to the park, go play with your friends. It's like putting these kids in solitary confinement. I know a guy and his son committed suicide. He was 12 because of the lockdown. And then his dad came out and started doing advocacy saying, like, we can't do this to our kids, man. You're an adult. Maybe you don't mind sitting in your lounge chair and relaxing and working from home, but these kids are trying to experience life and it's being stripped away from them. If you're 10% of your life was in solitary, basically. 10%. For me, 1/35 of my life was spent with the lockdown. And I'm older and I'm working, running a company. I've had the experience. I've traveled the world. I've hung out with my friends. I've gone skateboarding. And now I'm like working from home, building a business. These kids, they want to go out. They want to explore.
Well, I think the narrative needs to be switched on its head. These children have a right to their childhood. They have a right to see smiling people. They have a right to live in a pleasant environment. And we're talking about the formative years. So it is really beyond a doubt. And, I was a psych department assistant. I listen, I'm immersed in all of psychology and childhood development and so forth. You are stunning their psychosocial development. It's really not even debatable. It's just a fact. If you take away the right to read, the ability of children to read emotions or to feel comfort and to see smiling faces and reassurance, you are basically, it's kind of like that old video, The Wall from Pink Floyd. You're just creating like this factory of faceless, anonymous, just sort of, you're dehumanizing them, you're alienating them, you're atomizing them. And this, for me, it strikes me as a political program. It's not, the children are not, from what I've seen, the research, Wall Street Journal, you can go, just look at it. They're not appreciably at risk for this. Thank God. It's one of the small miracles that we can point to during this pandemic, and we're not taking advantage of it. It used to be in society where adults wanted to be on the front lines. They wanted to bear the brunt of things. They wanted to protect their children at all costs. And now we're seeing, from what I perceive, is a lot of anxiety and hysteria and selfishness on the point of parents who just refuse to protect their children, their childhood. I mean, they're so selfish and narcissistic. They're projecting their own anxiety onto their own child, and for me, that just shows a lack of empathy and ability to put yourself in another person's shoes. It's a real social scourge right now.
I posted simply an image from Statista of COVID deaths by age group.
Right.
I said nothing, made no comment. Screenshot post. Some establishment type, Democrat activist, took the screen grab, circled the elderly, and then said, Tim Pool doesn't care that these people are going to die. And I'm like, I literally said nothing. I literally had no comment on the data other than I just posted the data here's some information for you.
Nice.
It shows you the weakness that they're concerned about. The largest group at risk are people who are over 65. There is a decent risk for people over 40, and the risk diminishes for people who are under 40. I believe it's 1.63% of deaths were under 40.
Close, yeah.
And 30%, according to the CDC, of people hospitalized were obese. So
it was much more than that. I read one, it was 78% that CDC said they had obesity. But that is one study. It probably
CDC
varies.
website.
It probably varies.
CDC website
It's just a headline.
Yeah,
It
30.2% of hospitalizations over the past since the start of the pandemic was obesity.
Okay.
94% comorbidities. So I think understanding all of the context, having that information when you go to your doctor and talk to them about what makes sense for you, and being healthy. Take care of yourself, eat right, be well, all that good stuff.
94% of the people hospitalized by COVID have had comorbidities.
Of deaths.
That's right.
Of
CDC says that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, of deaths.
So in other words, 1.6 average of people with cardiopulmonary diseases, lung disease, diabetes, etc., which
age
are plausible.
comorbidity.
Yeah, and so
it's older people.
Yeah, so they're plausible causes of death, and they happen to test positive for COVID as well. Yeah. So they're not trying to do a diagnosis of a cause of death necessarily, but they're saying.
I will stress too, a lot of people think that the 94% comorbidity means they didn't die from COVID. But
that's not true.
Right. The way to describe it is imagine you have a bridge that's been old and dilapidated, and then someone jumps up and down on it. The COVID is the jumping up and down. Well, yeah, if you didn't do that, the bridge probably would have been fine. So you get something like COVID. And look, we've had a lot of people on this show, conservatives, who have either been vaccinated or have gotten COVID, and it sounds bad. Yeah, we've talked to some people on the show. I don't want to out the people who have experienced bad sicknesses, but we've had people who are like, dude, it was miserable. 2 weeks of fatigue.
Yeah,
you get that with the
breathing.
shots too, though. I mean, I had the Moderna round, a couple of those, and it wiped me for a couple of weeks. So, but the thing for this that we want to do, we want to introduce it to all of our troops. For me, that is too risky. These are young, athletic, physically fit people who are not necessarily at risk that much. It's very similar to seasonal flu if you look at the statistics for that particular age group, 20 to 30. And I think you wait until all of the results come in to make that decision. So I think they should be very careful about that. I'm a little concerned.
I definitely agree with being careful. I definitely think the challenge here is I hope that they go on an individual basis. That's always the important thing because of potential underlying conditions. But at the same time, I mean, if we've got people that have to go into conflict and deploy and go into areas, it would be nightmarish if there was an outbreak of COVID, of any illness, really. My understanding was that, people when they go through basic, they get a bunch of vaccines
Absolutely.
anyway.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think we got to be really careful right now simply because we need FDA approval for sure. We need to make sure we're doing right by all of the science. And with even Fauci saying the science changes as we learn more, it's okay, well, let's make sure if it's our military, we're going to be extra careful to make sure that we have the capability to defend ourselves and our allies. And, I'm
just wondering if the vaccine could harm even metabolism or, to have some sort of lingering effects. It is possible that it could cause some sort of reaction. And I mean, because you're intentionally stimulating the immune system to have a response against an antigen.
But that's vaccine.
Tricky. That is true, but
this is something that Charlie Kirk brought up when we were on the debate with Vosh. He mentioned Guillain-Barré syndrome, and he said that the CDC has put out a nerve damage warning for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That side effect actually is for many other vaccines as well. So, I went to the CDC a few years ago. This was during, I think, Zika, and I did an interview because we were just trying to find some interesting stories, and it was around the time The Division came out. You ever play that game?
I didn't play The Division.
Awesome game, by the way.
Right.
And it's basically like the world is a post-pandemic apocalyptic scenario. And so I was like, let's go do an interview with the CDC and ask them about their, I forgot what it was called. It was like Operation something where they simulated a large-scale pandemic. And it was really interesting. And what I was told there by some of the people at the CDC was there are risks for vaccines and side effects. They're well known. They're on the CDC's website. Make sure you read that stuff and talk to your doctor because you could be in that small percentage group. They said the challenges were for a lot of these diseases, if there's like, we're expecting to get 200,000 deaths from a disease and the vaccine could result in 50,000 adverse reactions, we have to choose the least amount of damage, so we'll encourage people to get the vaccines. And I understand that. It is quite utilitarian, but I can't pretend to have the answers for people other than.
But you see that with children, the mortality rate is lower than the incidence rate of reaction reported by VAERS. But I mean, obviously, mortality is worst case outcome, but pericarditis, myocarditis, and so on is very serious. So I mean, obviously, we sit here, we second guess and we armchair a lot of these health experts. But when you look at the problem is, and you see with any kind of information system, it reminds me of a kind of like a Hayek versus Keynes sort of argument. When you have decentralized sort of, decision makers, we have doctors who can assess individual health risks and just have that patient-centric care that we're so used to in the United States, where we have a consumer model of medicine provision.
Right.
That has tended to serve the United States people very well. We have we have superior cancer treatment. We have some of the most advanced medical centers in the world. But what we're seeing right now is a more socialized medicine approach where bureaucrats who are not teaching are treating everyone in American society as if they're a homogenous group, and we're all likely to have a serious reaction to COVID or the Delta variant, which is predominant in the United States right now and is much weaker and less deadly statistically. It's treating us as if we're all at equal risk. This is not the way the United States medicine has been practiced, we've always relied on our doctors to make the best judgments. There's a few exceptions. Smallpox, for example, led to mandates for vaccines. So it isn't the first time it's ever happened in this country, by the way. But what we see with the vaccines is they just rolled out so fast with the warp speed, and there's a lot of conflicting information. We're in the information age now, and we're getting pulled in different directions. It's undermining trust for a lot of people, and they're projecting their fear of the vaccine into their general distrust of the establishment. The people who have problems with the election and the people who have a problem with the vaccine, there's likely to be a very large overlap. However, it isn't the largest reticent group in the United States demographically. That's African Americans, followed by Hispanics, which Asians seem to be the most likely to go get the vaccine.
Among educated, the largest
PhDs.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's strange.
I ultimately think there's been a lot of people, because I always say talk to your doctor. And then I get the typical response from people is like, my doctor doesn't know anything or otherwise. And I'm like, you have a bad doctor. You know what I mean? Like, I've been prescribed stuff in the past. I don't even know what it is. When I got I injured my knee, they gave me some kind of steroid you get for like tendon inflammation and damage or whatever. I'm like, I don't know what this is. Thanks, doc. Patch me up and send me on my way. Doctor hands me a bunch of things like, here you go, take this stuff. I don't know, prednisolone or something.
Prednisone, corticosteroid.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I
had damaged
makes you edgy.
what is it? Meniscus? Is it
Meniscus.
Meniscus
Oh,
at the
wow.
knee?
Yeah.
Yeah. I fell from like a 7-foot quarter pipe to the
Thanks,
deck.
dude.
And
What were you trying to do?
I was just cruising. I was cruising. I was trying to do a rock and roll, just cruising around. I hung up. It happens, when the front wheels hit it. And I go to the doctor, and he's like, "Here you go." And he literally pulled out a bunch of these little packets, and he's like, "You're good. That's enough." And he was like, he gave me the prescription. He gave me the regimen or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know what it is. I'm gonna take it. If you don't trust your doctor, you need to find a doctor you trust. And see, if the crazy thing about it is, people can be political. You might go to a doctor and he's got like a Biden flag and he's waving it in front of you. Then go find a guy who's got the Trump flag and ask him. Oh, he's a doctor. I don't know. Find a doctor you trust. But yeah, you're right. I think this weird thing happened with it's very tribalist where there's a big overlap between people who don't trust the establishment and also are skeptical of vaccines. But isn't it interesting how it switched with the election? So this is fascinating. The polling data shows that Democrats felt the economy was bad, but right when Joe Biden got elected, they felt the economy was good. Like, come on. That's
And of course,
not,
we had
not
Kamala
based on
Harris
economics.
and other Democrats were throwing shade on the vaccine before the election, and then when Joe Biden's election, the vaccine's fine, everybody has to get it.
It's weird,
very weird.
It's a weird flip.
Yeah.
So I can understand, people. Here's the only thing I can understand is I went and talked to my doctor. My doctor said X. Like, right on. That's all. Other than that, basing your view of your health off of political tribalism, I think is really a bad idea. Like, go for a walk, man. Turn Twitter off. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.